So we're going to look at the first stages in setting up some partnership accounts. So the first thing we're going to do is click on Clients, and we can then search for the client we need. So in this case I'm going to type Jason, and there's our partnership client. So if we click on that, so there's the introductory screen where we see the details we previously entered here. Obviously these details can be filled out at a later date, but for now we're going to create a set of accounts. So we click on the tab that says Accounts, and we then click the button New Set of Accounts. So the name of the business has already been completed for us, so we need to complete the start of the period, which will calculate the end of the period. The type of accounts we'll leave as partnership, and for this purpose we're going to leave it blank for no comparative period. So that's blank and that's blank. And I will just say that these fields here marked with red asterisks, they do need to be completed in order for us to create this set of accounts. So once these are completed, we can say create. And the next stage in the process is the trial balance. So we're now going to look at the trial balance for our partnership. So we need to click on the trial balance tab. And then we have two columns here. We've got the current year and the comparative. Now in the previous example I said I wouldn't use comparative figures, so I'm going to leave that column blank at the moment. So I just need to fill in the current year's figures. Now, there's a couple of notes here which are very important. It says enter credits as negative amounts and enter debits as positive amounts. Now that's very important because if we don't do that, at the end of our trial balance it's not going to agree. So I'm going to put some figures in here now just to show you how it works. So sales, remembering to say minus because it's a credit, I'm going to say 5,000. I'm then going to say 2,000, it's a debit, so it's a positive amount. I'm then going to put 750 for wages and salaries, and I'm then going to scroll down to sundries and put 250 in there. Now please note, all the time the trial balance doesn't agree, this red box will be here saying there are errors in the trial balance. So I know that we need 2,000 to make this balance, so I'm going to scroll all the way down the bottom to drawings and say 2,000. I'm then going to click on Save Changes, and the red message has now gone, so our trial balance agrees. So we're now going to look at the profit share of our partnership. So we're going to click on the Partners tab. Now you'll see there are two partners in the business as we entered previously. Now because there's two partners, Taxfiler has assumed that the profit share will be 50-50, which in this example is absolutely correct. So we can leave that well alone. It's calculated the profit share from the profit in the accounts, and it's calculated the drawings from the drawing section. Now there are other empty boxes here which we can enter details in. We have the capital account brought forward, we have capital introduced, we can enter a salary for the partners. The profit share, although it's calculated at 50-50, we can of course change that if we need to. It's calculated the profit share for each partner, and it's calculated the drawings for each partner. But as I say, we still can change these figures if we need to. And if we'd had capital account brought forward figures there, obviously it would have carried forward capital account figures as well. At this stage we can add further partners if we need to, but for now I'm happy with this screen, we're happy with the figures, so we can click on Save Changes. So we're now going to look at the contents page for our partnership accounts. So we need to click on the Contents tab. Now the status of the accounts is the first item. We can choose between draft, final or approved. For this purpose I'm going to keep them as draft. And then the contents to include is basically a set of tick boxes. So for example, the business information sheet, we can choose to include it or not to include it. We have three fields here, the cover sheet, the accountant's report and the signature page, which we can change. So for any of them we can click on edit and we can make any necessary changes. For the accountant's report we can choose to include the ICAEW report, the independent accountant's report or none of them. And the signature page, we can change those details too. Now finally we have on the options part, mark draft accounts with watermark. Now again, we can choose to do that or we can choose not to do it. Whatever we do, we can click on Save Changes when we're finished. So we're now going to look at the notes and policies on our partnership accounts. So the first thing we'll do is to click on the Notes tab. So we've got two types of notes here. The first two, we can see they're clickable links. The rest are standard notes. So these first two here, as I said, we can click on them. So if we click on the profit and loss account analysis, we can choose whether to include that in the partnership accounts or not. And the accounting policies, which are also shown on the next tab. So as you can see, we have accounting basis, which we can click on and change if we need to. And we have turnover, which again can be changed. We also have the option here to add a new policy or paragraph. So we can click on that. If we need to choose any of those links here, we can do so. For now, we'll say we're happy with the notes and the policies, and we can move on to the next stage. So we're now going to look at viewing our partnership accounts. So if we to click on the View tab here, we can see the accounts have got the draft watermark here. We can scroll through them just to make sure they look okay. Got all the standard pages there. Moving through the accounts, we'll see the P&L and the balance sheet and the notes. So if I scroll back to the top, now you'll see we can view them in HTML format or PDF format. So if I choose PDF, we've actually got the option there to download a PDF copy, which we could, for example, send to our client for approval. But once we're happy with the accounts in draft format, we can then proceed to finalise them. So we can now look at finalising the partnership accounts and transferring the amounts to the tax return. So we can click on the Finalise tab here. And we can see there's no errors found. The accounts are marked as draft. So we can now change the status to approved once the client's approved the accounts. As you can see, we can edit the date of approval as necessary. Once we're happy, we can click on Save. And we can then click on the button that says Update Tax Return. Now, I haven't actually created a new partnership return for the 2016 year yet, but this exercise that I'm about to do will do that for us. So as you can see, it does say you must create the tax return before the partnership trade data can be updated. So we can do that by clicking on this button here, Create Tax Return. So we just need to check the details. 2016 year, it's an SA 800 form, and there's our reference. So we can say Create. So that's now created a tax return for us. So if we now click back to the accounts, and there's our partnership accounts there, if we click on them, and we go back to the Finalise tab, and we click once again on Update Tax Return, and there we go. So it says ready to create a new partnership trade for the tax return. So there's all our figures we've previously entered. So we can now click on Create Partnership Trade. Tax return updated. So just to double check that, if we go back to the home screen, now there's our partnership SA 800 return. So if we to click on that, and if we just quickly click on data input, we can see there's our trade page. So all the figures that we've previously entered, the accounts have now been transferred into our partnership tax return. So we have a couple more things to consider before we file the partnership return. We need to enter the signatory details and the partner shares. So if we click on Add a New Section, and if we move down to Tax Advisor and Signatory Details, so we need to complete this signatory part here. So if I say Date Signed and Name of Signatory, I can then click on Save Changes. And if I then move across to Partner Shares and I click there, now there's our £2,000 profit. Now we need to split this 50-50, so I'm going to put 1,000 there and 1,000 there. I'm then going to say Save Changes. And just to make sure that that is now correct, I'm going to click on Review. So the validation checks have been completed, so this is a legitimate return that we could now file to HMRC. But before we do that, we can actually view the return if we click back to the Tax Return tab. Now there's our return there, so we can actually look through it. Move to the last page and back to the first page. And we can actually download a PDF copy if we want to send to our client for approval, for example. So that's basically all we need to do as far as the partnership tax return is concerned. We can go back to review and file, and we can then think about filing the return.